Charlie Munger's Daily Journal nearly doubling down on a China bet, scooping up some shares on the dip. The interesting thing about Munger and AliBaba is that he has time and again expressed his admiration for sort of the autocratic way China runs its economy, often while also expressing his chagrin at how we run ours. So, I think that people understand with their sort of BYD investments and others that he may have the stomach kind of long term.
You have the risk appetite, right? Just
exactly.
dive in, which is a lot of people are doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. He's probably the most high-profile person who could really kind of plant that stake in the ground.
AliBaba is a top 3 holding for you. It sells at a steep discount to its U.S. peers. Best comparable is Amazon, which is triple Alibaba's PE. So what discount should U.S. investors seek when buying Chinese stocks, considering the political, regulatory, and especially the ownership structure risk? Oh, and considering the fortune Berkshire made on your BYD suggestion, why doesn't Buffett buy AliBaba?
Well, Warren, like many other intelligent people, likes to invest where he's personally comfortable. For some reason, I'm more comfortable with the Chinese than he is. That's a minor difference. I have all kinds of places where I'm just like Warren. I have all kinds of things where I'm not comfortable, and I just don't go near them. I think an old guy is entitled to invest where he wants to invest in.
What makes you uncomfortable? What do you not?
It's okay to have some things that you just don't want to bother with.
Like crypto, I got lots of questions
AliBaba
on
I don't think AliBaba is as entrenched as something like Apple and Alphabet. I think the internet is going to be a very competitive place, even if you're a big internet.
Bob Bridgenthal, who is a PhD in 1979 from aeronautical engineering, asked, so how would you rate investing in China with the current political tensions? Or you invested in China through the ownership of American companies that do business in China?
Of course, I'm invested partly in American companies that do business in China, including Coca-Cola. But I'm also invested very significantly in China through the management of Li Lu, whom the Munger family backed heavily when he formed a little private equity firm to invest in China. And he has had a very successful record, and that's made me follow very closely the leading companies in China. And of course, I've had very successful experience there. And I think it's likely to continue. No other big country ever got ahead this fast for that long.
And does that say that sort of the politics don't matter so much, or?
Yeah, that's a very interesting observation. What that shows is exactly right. Who would have guessed that a bunch of communist Chinese run by one party would have the best economic record that the world has ever seen? Of course it's extreme. And I think it proves that, it doesn't. We Americans would like to think that our free expression and allowing all kinds of opinion and all kinds of criticism of the government is totally essential part of the economy. And what the Chinese have proved is you can have a screamingly successful economy with a fairly controlling government. All the government has to do is create a lot of Smithian capitalism. And if you do that, having a sort of a controlling one-party government doesn't matter. That's not a fashionable thing to say, but I think it's true.
Why would anyone as smart as Munger or Buffett consider investing in China or any of the Chinese companies?
Well, we did it for a very simple reason. We got more strength per dollar invested. In China, the companies we invest in are stronger relative to their competition and priced lower. That's why we're in China.
Do you agree that there is a close parallel to the late 90s and this therefore, quote, must end badly?
Yes, I think it must end badly, but I don't know when.
You mentioned we're in a big bubble. Can you elaborate on that, and how is this likely to play out?
Well, that, of course, is a very intelligent question and a very difficult question. When you print money on the scale that modern nations are printing it, Japan, the United States, Europe, etc. We're getting into new territory in terms of size. The Japanese bought back not only a lot of their own debt, but a lot of their common stocks. So the Federal Reserve System, you can't imagine how much money printing Japan has done. And they haven't had all that much inflation, and it's still a very admirable civilization. In fact, you could argue that Japan is one of the more admirable civilizations in the whole world. And in spite of all this very extreme government money printing they've done. And they haven't had terrible consequences. Now they've had 25 years of stasis with living standards not improving very much. I don't think that came from their macroeconomic policies. I think that came from the rise of tough competition for their export powerhouse from China and Korea. But at any rate, it's weird what's happening, and nobody knows for sure how it's going to work out. I think it's encouraging that Japan can print as much money as it has and remain as civilized and calm and admirable as it has. And so I hope to God the United States has similar happy outcome. But I think the Japanese are better adapted for stasis than we are. The Munger family has invested in China substantially. And I did it because I respected the man who was going to do the investing. And it all looked inexpensive to me, and the companies looked very strong to me. And of course, it's worked out. I've done way better than I had any right to expect.
Does it still look that way when you look to the Chinese markets?
I think that the best companies in China are cheaper than the best companies in the United States.
The concern other investors might have before they follow in that way is that they don't know that much about Chinese companies, and maybe
they're just generally afraid of China.
Is there a reason that they may have some? I mean, you have people who are guiding you who understand China well. If someone was trying to do this on their own, would it be a little more dangerous?
Sure, it really helps to understand the country you're operating in, of course.
All right, that's a stupid question moment. You would not necessarily advise others to do this, I guess is my point, for investors who are sitting at home watching.
I don't think it would be all that hard for any smart person to find 4 or 5 great companies in China. The Chinese government will allow businesses to flourish. It was one of the most remarkable things that ever happened in the history of the world when a bunch of committed communists just looked at the prosperity of places like Singapore and said, the hell with this, we're not going to stay here in poverty. We're going to copy what works. And they changed communism. They just accepted Adam Smith and added it to their communism. And said, now we have communism with Chinese characteristics, which is China with a free market with a bunch of billionaires and so forth. And they made that shift. They deserve a lot of credit. Warren and I are not quite as good at that as changing our minds in many cases.
Yeah.
And that was a remarkable change coming from such a place. And of course, it's worked like gangbusters. It had this enormous growth in the average income of the average Chinese. They've lifted 800 million people out of poverty fast. And there was never anything like it in the history of the world. So my hat is off to the Chinese. And I think they will continue to allow people to make money. They've learned it works. The Chinese, I loved what the guy said in the first place. I don't care whether the cat is black and white as long as it catches mice. That's my kind of talk.
In that list of the 20 most valuable companies, just 3 are Chinese. Now, if you're looking out 30 years, how many do you think will be Chinese? My guess is more. It's amazing what has been accomplished.
Yeah, really amazing.
And they found what works. I mean, there's nothing like finding something that works in order to sort of reinforce ideas over time, and we'll see what happens.